All right, today is another day of section 1.1. This is section 1.1b. We are going through and doing some more review once again today. This time we are subtracting integers. So let's go ahead and get started. This is review 1.1b, subtracting integers. Subtracting integers, which I realize is going right off the screen. So we move this over and you can still see most of it. Anyway, close enough. 1.1b, subtracting integers. Hopefully this will not be anything too onerous for you, especially the first half of it, considering subtracting positive integers is something that we've already spent a considerable amount of time doing. And I sincerely hope that this is something you remember from elementary school. So let's go ahead and look at some examples. Example 1, this will have many parts. A will be the first one. This one is 10 minus 7. 10 minus 7. Okay, most of you probably instantly jumped at this and said, well, obviously it's 3. And this is true. There is, however, another way we can rewrite subtracting positive integers, and this is in the context of our previous lesson on adding integers, positive and negative, and that is by rewriting it as being 10 plus a negative 7. And if you think about what we did last time, this means that minus 7 is the same as saying plus negative 7, which really means that subtracting a number is identical to adding a negative integer. And while you may say, okay, well, this result is kind of trivial, I still remember how to do the number line. We move 10 units to the right, and then we move 7 units back. But this is valuable because it will allow you to properly contextualize how exactly subtraction actually works. Because subtraction really is actually just adding a negative integer. Subtraction is, in some respects, almost like a fraudulent operation. It's really addition with a negative integer disguised as an operation unto itself. And this allows us to come to one of our conclusions, much like we had yesterday, is that subtraction is the same as adding a negative. And we have a number of examples about subtracting positive integers. So our second one is 8 minus 14, which, like the previous example, can be rewritten as 8 plus negative 14. And when adding a positive and a negative integer, you remember yesterday when we have different signs, we need to treat it like a subtraction problem. So you can think, all right, well, in a normal subtraction problem, it would be 14 minus 8. 14 minus 8 is 6. However, since the larger of our two numbers was the negative 14, we were able to say that our final solution should not be positive, but should be negative, giving us an answer of negative 6. And if we wanted to very quickly do this on the number line, I'm going to count my number line by 2 this time instead of the more conventional 1. So this will be 2, 4, 6, 8, and then negative 2, negative 4, negative 6, we're running out of space, and negative 8. So if we wanted to draw this on the number line, this would go pretty much the same way as the problems we've had previously. We need to go plus 8 units to the right, and that gets us to our first value, which is down here at 8. And then we need to go 14 units back. And since each of these is 2, this is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 14. So we need to go back from here to here. This is our minus 14, which has us arrive at the minus 6, just as we should expect. And I'm sure you remember this from the adding integers section. This is exactly the same stuff we've already seen. Let's go through and look at a couple more examples. On C here, we have 12 minus 7, which can be rewritten as 12 plus negative 7. negative sign causes the 7 to be a negative 7. And because I think most of you are probably able to figure out what 12 minus 7 is, we can say that is a 5. All right, we have just one more example. D. On D, what we have is 12 minus 25. While you could potentially write this out on a number line, I think it would be a little bit cumbersome to go through and put all those numbers down. So I think the easier way would be to treat this like a subtraction problem, and if necessary, you can treat it like 25 minus 12. You just need to remember that because the 25 is actually the negative number, our answer should also be negative, because 25 is considerably larger than 12 is. Regardless, once you work through this problem, if you need to, pause the video here and spend a moment trying to figure out what it is. Once you work through this problem, you should eventually find that it is negative 13. Notice, 12 plus 13 is 25. So we would expect that 13 would be the answer when we're finding the difference between 12 and 25. All right, well that covers subtracting positive integers, but we have a whole nother world subtracting negative integers. And subtracting negative integers is where I think things start to get a little hairy when it comes to these integer operations using addition and subtraction. And in many respects actually gets to be legitimately difficult. And this is something that you may have to work at, you may need to memorize if it doesn't come naturally to you. But we're going to look at a few examples. Some of them will be easy, some of them will be not as easy. So, example 2. A is negative 6 minus 7. Now, you can also think of this as being negative 6 plus a negative 7. And much like we had on our number line yesterday when we added two negative numbers together, this is also adding two negative numbers together. So that means we have two moves to the left, which is two negative moves. And if you remember our rule from yesterday, a negative and a negative combined together. Anytime you have the same sign, you add the numbers together, and then the answer has the same sign as the numbers. So in this one, both of our numbers have negative signs, so our answer will also be negative. And then you need to ask yourself, what's 6 plus 7? And if necessary, you can count it on your fingers, but 6 plus 7 is, pause if you need a moment to figure it out for yourself, 6 plus 7 is 13. Therefore, our answer is going to be negative 13. Now, this is not the complicated example of subtracting negative integers, because things are about to get a little crazy. And that little crazy thing that's about to happen is we're going to have negative 3 minus negative 7. And at this point, you're probably looking at this and going like, holy mother of God, why are there all these negatives running around? And it's not actually as difficult as it looks like it might be. You just need to understand what the rule is that's going on here. And I'm actually going to go ahead and draw in the number line and try to explain this because I think it might address some of the confusion. So we're going to start from here. This will be our 0. We're going to count by ones. So this is negative 3 over here, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops, the 4 goes down here. You don't actually put the numbers on the line itself. And we're going to do some moves. So the first move we're going to do is with our negative 3. So our negative 3 starts from 0, moves 3 units to the right, and we're down here at negative 3. Okay, great. That part should be something that you shouldn't have any problem with. It's like we did up here with the minus 14 and the plus 8. We just did one simple move. But now we have minus negative 7. And you might be wondering, what the heck do I do with this? Is this just another negative move? The answer is it isn't, but we're going to go into what exactly is happening here. So normally when you were to do a minus 7, so if you just had the negative 7, like this, if this was plus negative 7 like we had up here, we would do a movement to the left, 7 units. But let's think about addition and subtraction and relationship that they have. Addition and subtraction are opposites, and I think everyone can agree that plus and minus are opposites. So if you have a negative 7, like when we had this minus 7 here, that's sort of like saying we're subtracting 7 positive units. But when we subtract those 7 positive units, it becomes a leftward movement. So whereas previously, if we just had a 7, that would be positive and we'd move to the right. When we make it a subtract 7, we move to the left. So the way I want to think about this is subtracting causes us to move in the opposite direction that you would normally expect. So when a positive number is subtracted, it's moved to the left as opposed to what we would expect with a positive number, which is moving to the right. By the same token, if we were to subtract a -7, the -7 you would normally expect moves to the left, but since we're subtracting it, we need to do the opposite of what we expect, and therefore we need to move it 7 units to the right. So from here, we're going to add 7 units. So this is the minus -7, that becomes +7, and we end up with an answer of -3 minus -7 equals +4. So, in essence, what happens is subtracting a negative is the same as adding. So let's go ahead and put this off to the side. This is a very important conclusion. Adding and subtracting integers is not hard, but if you forget this, you're going to make a lot of mistakes, and that would be bad. So, subtracting negative numbers is the same, it would help if I spelled things correctly, same as adding. Exclamation point, underline, because that was what was in my notes that I'm looking off of. All right, so there is one other super duper handy dandy trick you can do here to remember this relationship. So you'll notice here we have this negative parenthesis -7 close parenthesis. As we've been putting negative parentheses around negative numbers that don't come at the very beginning of an equation like we've seen here. Every other time we've been putting parentheses around them like here. So in order to remember that -3 minus -7 is the same as adding, you can do this. You can just draw in a big old fat plus sign there. And that will help you remember, oh, the 2 negative signs in the parenthesis look kind of like a plus sign. So -3 minus -7 is actually -3 plus 7, which goes perfectly with the diagram that I've written here and also clearly tells you the answer is 4. All right, we're going to do one more example. You might want to pause the video, give yourself an opportunity to solve it on your own first. This last one is -4 minus parenthesis -10. We got to find out what that equals. So you might want to pause here if you want to do it on your own. I'm just going to barrel through it. -4 is the same, that's fine. But we have negative parenthesis -7. I'm going to go ahead and grab my green pen. I'm going to say, oop, that's actually a plus. I'll rewrite the problem as -4 plus 10. -4 plus 10, you can use your number line if you'd like to, but -4 plus 10 just gives us a nice 6. And the reason we know that it's 6 is because 10 is the bigger number. So if we did this as a subtraction problem with 10 minus 4, using the rules we learned yesterday, we would get 6, and it would be positive because the 10 was the bigger number. So that covers subtracting integers. And you really got to remember subtracting negative integers. That's the hard part of adding and subtracting integers. If you remember anything from like grades 2 through 4, it's probably should be the only hard part. But it may take some practice, so if you're struggling with it, don't feel bad about it. Just keep at it. I know you can do this, and good luck on the assignment we'll have, which will have many, many examples for you to work on.